الحمد لله رب العالمين صلوات الله وسلامه على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن اهتدى بهداه إلى يوم الدين أما بعد. So inshallah this is going to be the last lecture of Nuzhat Al-Nadhar, and where did we reach? Al-I'lam. قال الإمام حافظ بن حجر رحمه الله تبارك وتعالى: ثم الرواة إن اتفقت أسماؤهم وأسماء آبائهم فصاعدا واختلفت أشخاصهم. So he says here what is called al-muttafiq wal-muftariq. That means what is equal but it's separated. What does that mean? That means the names are all like each other. Not the same guy. So this is called al-muttafiq, which means like each other, wal-muftariq, which means separated. And no matter it's two, they are two people or more than two people. Is if we have the same nickname and the same last name, Abu Fulan Al-Fulani. So you can have lots of names which are nicknames that are similar to each other. Knowledge, you would know that these are several people and not the same name. Now, many people get confused when they see several names similar to each other. So they don't know how to differentiate between them. And he says here, al-mu'talif. Okay, and this is al-Baghdadi wrote a very interesting book and big book that talks about this, and the name is al-muttafiq wal-muftariq. Lots of information. Hafiz ibn Hajar says, not me. Hafiz ibn Hajar says that. The type of knowledge that is called al-muhmal. Muhmal means something that is not, that you don't pay attention to. Because al-muhmal, you think that, why is it vice versa? Because you think that two persons, person is two guys because he has several names. So in that case, you have to know it. And in this kind, you think that several names are one person, and that's wrong. Al-mu'talif wal-mukhtalif. Mu'talif, that is similar to something else. Wal-mukhtalif, that means something that is different from something else. So if the names are written the same, but the pronunciation is different, we call it al-mu'talif wal-mukhtalif. Dots like Jamra and Hamza. See, Jamra, if I write here, Jamra and Hamza. So it's the same when you see it, but the difference is the dots Something else. When you have salam, lam, only the vowels differentiate between them, but the name is written the same. And we have lots of things like that in Arabic. So this is a kind of knowledge that has to be known, and you have to understand. You have to know how to pronunciation to pronounce how to pronounce the names. Where do you get that from? There are books that show you how to pronounce the names, and you have to take this knowledge from shuyukh that have their shuyukh, and they heard that. They heard the name. How is it pronounced? So knowing this kind of knowledge is very important. And Ali ibn al-Madini said that the biggest typograph happen in names. You go on, and man, I heard a lot of funny things like that. People who don't know how to pronounce the names, and they go pronounce it in a very funny way. That the idea of Hafidh ibn Ali ibn al-Madini, he said, why did he say that? Because everything you can have a rule to use it. How to pronounce so and so, except the names. The names, you can't have a rule to pronounce it. It's something that you hear it, you don't pronounce it. Now, many names, if you don't hear it, you can't have a rule that shows you how to pronounce it. Okay? Abu Ahmad al-Askari, linguistic and muhaddith, and he passed in the year 382 Hijri. He wrote a book called Al-Mu'talif wal-Mukhtalif. Translating what Al-Hafidh ibn Hajar is saying. I'm just translating what Al-Hafidh ibn Hajar is saying. I'm not talking from my own knowledge. And if something is difficult, I go on and try to make it, and try to ease it, or try to clear it. Added Abu Ahmad al-Askari, and he added to his book a chapter that talks about at-tasheef. He has a book called at-tasheef. Tasheef means making typographic mistakes. Tasheef. And Al-Hafidh Abdul Ghani ibn Sa'id, Abdul Ghani ibn Sa'id al-Misri, al-Azdi, which is a big tribe north called Al-Azd. Al-Misri because he was in Egypt. He was Egyptian. Book that he compiled 2 books in it. A book called Mushtabah al-Asma and a book called Mushtabih al-Nisbah. That means the names that are similar to each other and the nicknames that are similar to each other. And the nicknames that are similar to each other. The Shaykh of Abdul Ghani al-Misri, an important book about that. Then Al-Khatib made an index to that book. Then all those books and all the information that are inside those books were compiled by a prince called Abu Nasr ibn Makula, and he was a poem and a linguistic muhaddith, a great scholar called Abu Nasr ibn Makula, who was in Baghdad, and he was killed in the year 485. He wrote this book that is called Al-Ikmal في المؤتلف والمختلف من أسماء الرجال. Very interesting and important book, because any name that you don't know how to pronounce it, you go back to this book and he shows you how to pronounce it. It wasn't in those books. Showed the mistakes that were in the previous books. You know, scholars aren't prophets, and their books aren't a Quran, so they can make mistakes, they can forget, they can do lots of things. So when a scholar comes, he shows the mistakes in the previous books. Yeah. Until now, I'm telling you what is in the book I'm translating. And his book, Al-Ikmal, gathered all what has to do with this kind of knowledge, or this kind of aspects. And his book is the main book that everybody goes back to in this kind of knowledge. Al-Hafiz Abu Bakr ibn Nuqta al-Hanbali went and wrote, Hafiz ibn Nuqta, rahimahullah, and he passed in the year 629, and he has a book that is published in 2 volumes called التقييد في معرفة رواة الأسانيد. Very interesting book. I read it years ago. And in that book, he said a very important word. He said that this word that everybody always talks about, that anybody that has to do with Mustalah al-Hadith is dependent on Al-Imam Al-Khatib Al-Baghdadi, because he wrote in all kinds of things that have to do with Mustalah al-Hadith. And that's why I always say, scholars say that the great Imam that wrote in this knowledge is Al-Khatib Al-Baghdadi, and then Al-Imam Ibn Salah rahimahullah went writing, depending on the books of Al-Khatib, went writing a book called Muqaddimat Ibn Salah, and Muqaddimat Salah started either making it as a poem and adding and discussing, or summarizing the book, or whatever. All the scholars until nowadays. So Al-Khatib rahimahullah is this knowledge. Okay? Writing an index. Writing an index which continues the book of Ibn Makula rahimahullah. His book is called Al-Mustadrak على كتاب الإكمال. ما عنديش أي ورقة. ما عنديش. المستدرك على اصبر خليني ده عندي الدرس انا. Sorry. His book's name is المستدرك على كتاب الإكمال. مستدرك means منصور بن not Sulaim, السين بفتح السين, so it says Mansur ibn Salim. So you see this kind of knowledge, This is very important. If you don't hear it and you don't find a scholar that shows you how to pronounce it, you will just pronounce it as the way that you think it's right. And that's wrong. So Mansur ibn Salim, rahimahullah, originally from Hamadan, which is in Iran right nowadays, but he lived in Alexandria, and he was known by Ibn al-Imadiyya. He passed in the year 673. He wrote a book called, a small book, not a big book, called Al-Mu'talif wal-Mukhtalif too. He writes a book, then somebody comes after him and writes an appendix, and then another writes an appendix, and the books go huge and big. Then Imam Abu Hamid ibn al-Sabuni wrote a book, Abu Hamid ibn al-Sabuni, 180. And then an Imam comes and compiles everything in one book, and that's what Al-Hafiz Al-Dhahabi rahimahullah did. Al-Hafiz Al-Dhahabi rahimahullah, which is a small book. He says it's very brief and small. And he depended he depended on making the names by vowels, shakl. But this made lots of mistakes in his book. Why? Because when you write a book and you fix the names by shakl, the vowels, people who come after you might make lots of mistakes when they write the book again, because they don't photocopy it. They write it. So the mistakes keep on appearing, so the benefit from the book goes. So he says, and the book, so when the book had lots of mistakes in it because of that, which is against what he wanted to do in his book. His book's name is Al-Mushtabih fi Asma' al-Rijal, and Al-Mushtabih fi Asma' al-Rijal. Then he says, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it easy for me to, and I called it Tabsir al-Muntabih bitahrir al-Mushtabih, and it's in one volume, and the book now is published, and I saw it, and I made it by by بفتح السين وكسر اللام. In the vowels in writing, but when he says that and he mentions that, that's it. You don't have any problem after that. So he said, I made it in a good way that would be pleased for everybody, and I added lots of things that Al-Hafiz Al-Dhahabi didn't pay attention to, or he didn't even see it. So thanks Allah for that. That's what he said. And this book is published in 4 volumes. This book is published in 4 volumes. He says here, Bismillah, Al-Mutashabih, if the names are the same in writing and in pronouncing, so you have Muhammad ibn al-Hasan, Muhammad ibn Hamza, Muhammad ibn al-Hussein, etc. So, no, sorry. He says the father's name are different in pronouncing, but are the same in writing, like Muhammad ibn Aqil and Muhammad ibn Uqayl, called al-Mutashabih. Might not pay attention to these, or vice versa. when you have the names are different, but the father's name are like each other, like Shuraih ibn Nu'man and Surayj ibn Nu'man. So Surayj and Shuraih are the same in writing, but are different in in pronouncing. Yes, different in pronouncing. So the first one is a tabi'i that narrates from Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu. The second one is one of the shuyukh of Imam Bukhari rahimahullah, called Al-Mutashabih. Are you with me, guys? Is everything clear? And sometimes the father and the name and the father's name are the same, and the difference is the nickname. The nickname. Khatib al-Baghdadi rahimahullah wrote a very interesting book in this type of knowledge called تلخيص المتشابه في الرسم وحماية ما أشكل منه عن بوادر التصحيف والوهم. And he wrote another appendix called تالي التلخيص. That means the book that is referred, and both of these books are published, and I saw some of these books. Yes, I saw them. I won't claim that I read all these books, no, but I saw them in the bookstores and in the libraries. And Hajar says that these books are beneficial a lot. And we have from this type of knowledge and from the previous knowledge that أن يحصل الاتفاق والاشتباه في الاسم واسم الأب مثلا إلا في حرف أو حرفين فأكثر من أحدهما أو منهما. Same thing, the name and the father's name, except in two letters or one letter, and that's in two cases, two categories. The first one, the difference might be in the pronunciation, not in writing, or it can be in limiting like what? Like Muhammad ibn Sinan, two ends here, between them between them alif. So these are a lot. One of them is called Al-Awaqi, and he's the Shaykh of Imam Bukhari. And we have Muhammad ibn Sayyar. We have a lot that have this name. Al-Yamami, Shaykh Umar ibn Yunus. We have Muhammad ibn Hunayn. A lot that this is a tabi'i. He narrates from Ibn Abbas and others. We have Muhammad ibn Jubayr. Mu'arrif ibn Wasil. ومطرف. So this one is Mu'arrif. This one is Mutarrif. And he narrates from Abi Hudayfah al-Nahdi. And we have Ahmad ibn Hussein. He's the student of Ibrahim ibn Sa'd and others. And we have Ahyad ibn Hussein, not Ahmad, Ahyad. You see? And he's Shaykh al-Imam Bukhari, narrates from Abdullah ibn Muhammad al-Bikandi. And we have Hafs ibn Maysara, Bukhari's Shaykh. And we have Ja'far ibn Maysara, well-known Shaykh of Ubaydullah ibn Musa al-Kufi. Okay. The other category is like Abdullah ibn Zayd. We have lots of Abdullah ibn Zayd from the Sahaba radiallahu anhum. One of them is the one that saw the adhan in his dream. And his grandfather's name is Abdul Rabbi, so he's Abdullah ibn Zayd ibn Abdul Rabbi. And the other one who narrates how the Prophet ﷺ used to make his ablution His father's name is Asim, Abdullah ibn Zayd ibn Asim. We have the Abdullah ibn Yazid. He's called Abu Musa. The narrations of Aisha radiallahu anha. And some claim that this guy is the other guy, but that's not there. That's not true. We have Abdullah ibn Yahya. There are a lot. We have Abdullah ibn Nujay, not Yahya, Nujay. So it's similar to Yahya. Ali radiallahu anhu. Or sometimes in writing and in pronouncing the names, the names are the same. What is the difference between them? Is that the names are, one is before the other one or something like that. Aswad ibn Yazid and Yazid ibn Aswad flipped over. And we have Abdullah ibn Yazid wa Yazid ibn Abdullah. We have Ayyub ibn Sayyar wa Ayyub ibn Yasar. Sayyar, Yasar. Second one is weak, the second one is unknown. Okay, that last thing that we have here, the last thing is several things that are important for anyone who wants to study al-hadith. The first one is knowing the stages of scholars. This is very important for the student of hadith. So when you mention a name, you have to know which stage was it. The best thing to know the date, the exact date of his birth and death. But not everybody can memorize all those dates. But at least you have to know that this guy was from the Sahaba, the Tabi'een, or Atbat Tabi'een, or this first century, second century, third, seventh, etc. And this is very important so that you will be aware from making mistakes in the names and making mistakes in to know the tadlis and stuff like that. And you have to know the an'ana, and you can't know that except if you know the years of the stages of every scholar. And they call this a tabaqa, tabaqat al-rijal. Tabaqa, every tabaqa is, and that's how Imam al-Dhahabi rahimahullah wrote his Siyar A'lam al-Nubala in tabaqats. Every tabaqa is for the other one. Where lots of scholars narrate from that are similar to each other in their ages, and they have the similar shuyukh. So that's called tabaqah. So they say, مثلا, they say Sufyan al-Thawri min tabaqat al-Imam Abi Hanifa. Say, Shaykh, what would be most ideal? Why? Ideal way to categorize history. Is it by century or generation or dynasties, etc.? Well, it's by generations. So this is, they call it the tabaqat is the generation, not the century. But the century is good too. So you can say, well, he was in the 7th century, he was in the 8th century, at least. I mean, but to mix names until you don't know even which century he was, that's a disaster. So he says here that a man can be in 2 stages, in 2 generations, like Malik. He was a Sahabi, and he served the Prophet ﷺ, and he's in the 10th generation of the Sahaba radiallahu anhu. Promised Sahaba to enter paradise, but he was young. when the Prophet ﷺ passed, he was 20 years old. So when you see the Sahaba radiallahu anhu, due to their accompanying the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you make them all in one generation that is called Sahaba, like Ibn Hibban did in his book. But if you go in details, you can make them in categories too, due to the oldest Sahaba, the latest Sahaba, etc. And that's what Al-Hafidh Imam ibn Sa'd did in his Tabaqat. Is the best book that talked about that. And after the Sahaba, we have the Tabi'een and Atba' Tabi'een, etc. And the same thing. Some say Kibar Tabi'een, Awasat Tabi'een, Sigar Tabi'een. Point of view, actually. It's very important to know the births of the scholars. Why? Because you can know if somebody claims that he met another one. So when you see the history, says this is important. Important to know the countries. So when I tell you, Imam Abu Hanifa, where was he? You say, well, maybe he was in Egypt. No, that's a big mistake. He was in Iraq and he was in Kufa. When you say Imam Shafi'i, where was he? You have to know he was born in Gaza and he lived in Mecca, and then he traveled to Iraq, then Egypt, and he settled in Egypt, and he passed in Egypt. Imam Malik, he remained and settled in Medina. Imam so and so, until you have to know at least the Imams where they were. Where were they? Where were they? See? To know, and this is why this is important, so that you won't confuse between two similar names. You have to know this narrator, is he trustworthy or not? Because this is the main thing from knowing the names. So you have to know, is he trustworthy, is he good, is he just, etc. And you have to know the stages of criticizing the narrators. Doesn't make you omit or forget about this narration. And sometimes there are reasons that make someone say bad things about another narrator, but actually he doesn't deserve to say that. And so these things are very important to know. First thing to say about a narrator is to say he is the most liest guy. أكذب الناس أفعل أكذب الناس إليه المنتهى في الوضع. He's the highest one in lying. Well, that's a big problem. Or you can say he's a corner of lying, and like these words. Or you can say he's a dajjal, wadda', kadhab. He's a liar. He's an idiot. He's an if he is something like to say, what is the word? The most easiest thing to say, yes, he says the most easiest thing to say is to say, سيء الحفظ, his narration, his memory is bad. Or he is weak, something like that. And there are words between these two, so you can say ساقط, متروك, فاحش الغلط, منكر. So these are more stronger than saying only he's weak, ضعيف. ليس بالقوي, he's not strong. ليس فيه مقال is about him. So the highest thing to say, أوثق الناس, the most trustworthy guy, or أثبت الناس, best in memorizing, or إليه المنتهى في التثبت, narrations. ثقة ثقة, you add the word, or you say ثبت ثبت, or ثقة حافظ, or عدل ضابط, or like these words. The lowest thing that you can say is Shaykh. He's a Shaykh. Or يروى حديث, somebody else and then narrates. And what is close to those things? All these you can know them. What are now these are very important to know. This here to benefit for your benefit. So this is the first one. It is agreeable to take any good criticize from a scholar that you know his, not from somebody who doesn't know. So a scholar that is knowledgeable in these things, so that he is not just mentioning that he's a good guy or he's the best guy or he narrates good, but actually he himself is not capable to say that. If even at least one guy said that that guy is a trustworthy guy, we accept that from him. This is a narration. There's a difference between witness and narration. And I told you about that. Of statements. So this doesn't need more than one guy. Like the judge, when he gives a statement, he's only one guy and he gives a statement. But witness is somebody who is witnessing for the judge to say what he has to say. So this is another thing, and that's why it needs two witnesses. If somebody says between the word used tazkiyah, that means praising somebody, endorsements, okay, endorsement somebody, differentiate between when somebody endorses somebody by himself or narrates it from somebody else. There's a difference between them, he says. That's a good opinion. Because the first one doesn't need any number in endorsing. And it's like somebody who is given a statement. And the second one, we can accept from him except from فيجري فيه الخلاف ويكون منزلة وإن كان الثاني فيجري فيه الخلاف ويتبين أنه أيضا لا يشترط فيه العدد. Not need, is not accepted only from somebody that is capable and awake. So we are not allowed to take any criticize from somebody exaggerates, or somebody that drops people from by things that don't lead to dropping people. Uh, 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 it is not accepted to praise or to endorse somebody only because his image. Well, he has a big beard. Oh, mashallah, he's a good guy. No, no, no. He can have a big beard and he's a liar and he's a bad guy. So don't take endorsements from only images. Is is a very capable scholar that knows all the narrators or the majority of narrators. He says that a weak guy is a trustworthy guy, or that a trustworthy guy is a weak guy. We don't have that. You can have several opinions, but they agreed about that? No. He never used to drop the narration of somebody until all scholars drop him. The Hajj is saying the scholar that talks about these things has to be very careful, because if he claims that a weak guy is trustworthy or strong, it's like that you're making a new statement in Islam and you're not paying attention to that, because you're going to say that the hadith is authentic, and when the hadith is authentic, that means you have to practice what it has, the meanings of it, or you have to believe in it, or whatever. So if actually you didn't make your best, that's not a proper thing. So you might enter to Islam what is not inside Islam, what is not in Islam. And it is so dangerous that you might narrate a false hadith. The Prophet ﷺ says, who narrates any hadith from me and it's a lie, he's one of the liars. And vice versa, the other side, if he claims that if he drops somebody that is trustworthy and he's innocent, that means you're accusing somebody by something that he didn't do. So that's very bad, and you might meet him in the judgment day and he'll take his right from you. And the problem here in these kinds of things that desires enter these. For example, he's not like your sect, or not like your group, or not like your mother, so you accuse him. You say, this guy's a bad guy, this guy's a nasty guy, and this is a big problem even nowadays. You can find lots of people who criticize others without fearing Allah in these kinds of things. So this is very important. He says, وَلَا يَنْبَغِي إِطْلَاقُ الْجَرْحِ بِذَلِكَ فَقَدْ قَدَّمْنَا تَحْقِيقَ الْحَالِ فِي الْعَمَلِ بِرِوَايَةِ الْمُبْتَدِعِ. He talks about the innovators. And criticizing in narration is always preferred than endorsing. Why? That's what many scholars said, he says. But that's if it was from somebody who gave his evidence about that, and he knows why he criticized them. But if it wasn't like that, no, we have to search, because he might criticize them by something that doesn't that is not a thing that drops a narrator. That endorsed them, if we find somebody who accused them in something, even if he didn't give an evidence. If he was a well-known scholar and capable scholar. Or that means he's an ignorant guy. Not an ignorant guy. He's somebody who is not known. His opinion about him, rather than not saying anything about him. Ibn Salah has an opinion about that. He says, no, we stop. We don't say anything. But it's the same thing. If you stop, that means you consider the hadith as a weak hadith, because we can't just stop. You just stop, that means you're not going to use the hadith. That means it's unusable. The nicknames of the narrators, like Abu Fulan. Abu Fulan is al-kuna, al-kuna. You have to know that, because there are scholars that are well known by their kunya and their names aren't known, and vice versa. And you have to know that so that you won't confuse between names. And some have their name is the same, Abu Fulan, Abu Bakr, for example. There are narrators that call Abu Bakr, that's their name. It's not a nickname, it's a name. And there are others that have several kuna. Abu al-Khair, Abu Bakr, Abu Muhammad, several kuna. Like Ibn Jurayj has Abu al-Walid and Abu Khalid. Exactly their kunya. Some say Abu Kada, some say Abu Kada. They don't know it exactly. Are similar to their fathers, like Abu Ishaq, Ibrahim ibn Ishaq. The kunya is the same name of his father. And this is one of Atba' Tabi'in. And it's very important so that you won't confuse by the names. He might say حدثنا Ibn Ishaq, and you say no, that's a mistake, it's Abu Ishaq. That's wrong. So you have to know that so that you don't confuse between the names. Or you have Ishaq ibn Abi Ishaq al-Sabi'i. Or you have scholars that have their kunya, the same kunya of their wives, like Abu Ayyub al-Ansari, and his wife is Ayyub. There are others that don't have the same kunya, because the wife has a previous husband or anything like that. Some have the same kunya of their father, like Rabi' ibn Anas an Anas. So many people think that he's narrating from his father, but actually he's not narrating from his father. He's narrating from Anas ibn Malik. This type, the Shaykh's name is the same name of the father, like Amr ibn Sa'd an Sa'd. Or you have others that are not referred to their fathers, like Al-Miqdad ibn Aswad. Al-Aswad is not his father, he is his adopted father. So his name is Miqdad ibn Amr. But Al-Aswad ibn Yazid adopted him in the ignorant days, and then he became a Sahabi. So his name is Miqdad ibn Amr, not Al-Kindi. But Al-Aswad ibn Yazid al-Zuhri adopted him. Yes. Or some are referred to their he is one of the great shuyukh of Imam Ahmad. Like that. And like Shurahbil ibn Hasana, and like Ibn Buhayna. All these are like Ibn Taymiyyah. That is grandma, not grandfather. Yeah, because he doesn't like that. So he says, حدثنا إسماعيل الذي يقال له ابن علي. He is called Ibn Ali because he doesn't like that. So he doesn't wanna have the responsibility of that name. And there are others that are referred to something that you think it's their father, their tribe's name or something, but it's not like that. Like Khalid al-Hadda. Al-Hadda means the people who fix shoes, but he wasn't somebody who deals with that. That wasn't his work. But he used to sit down with them, so they called him Khalid al-Hadda. And Sulaiman al-Taymi, he's not referred to Bani Taym, but he settled in their land, so they called him the same call. There are others that are referred to their grandfathers, not their fathers. So it's very important to know that. Like Al-Hasan ibn Hassan ibn Ali, many, and like Al-Hasan ibn Hassan ibn Hassan ibn Ali, 3 names. And like Imam, like uh, Abu al-Yum al-Kindi, who was a well-known narrator, his name is Zayd ibn al-Hassan ibn Zayd ibn al-Hassan ibn Zayd ibn al-Hassan. Several times it goes Zayd ibn Hassan, Zayd ibn Hassan. Sometimes you have somebody's name, the same name of his sheikh, and his sheikh of his sheikh, and etc. Like Imran an Imran an Imran. The first one is Imran al-Qasir. The second one, Abu Raja al-Utaridi, is Imran al-Husayn, Sahabi radiallahu anhu. Or like Sulaiman an Sulaiman an Sulaiman. So the first one is Sulaiman ibn Ahmad al-Tabarani. The second one is Ibn Ahmad al-Wasiti. The third one is Ibn Abdul Rahman al-Dimashqi al-Ma'ruf ibn Binti Shurahbil. The same thing, the student and his sheikh, like Abi al-Ala al-Hamadani al-Attar, Hani al-Haddad, and every one of them's name is Hassan ibn Ahmad ibn Hassan ibn Ahmad ibn Hassan ibn Ahmad. In their family's name. And Abu Musa al-Madini wrote a book that has to do with that. The ones that their sheikh and their narrator are the same. This is a very interesting kind of knowledge. Ibn Salah didn't talk about that. And the benefit of it is to be aware of making mistakes or confusing, that you might think that the name is there's a mistake in the name, that it is repeated, but actually it's not repeated. Like what happened to Abd ibn Humayd. Abd ibn Humayd al-Kishi or al-Kissi, Imam that wrote a Musnad. We have here Al-Bukhari, he narrates from Muslim, and Muslim narrates from Bukhari too. So we have his Shaykh Muslim ibn Ibrahim al-Farahidi al-Basri, and Muslim al-Hajjaj narrates from Al-Bukhari. Abd ibn Humayd, he narrates from Muslim ibn Ibrahim, and Muslim ibn Hajjaj. Ibn Abi Kathir narrates from Hisham, and Hisham narrates from Yahya ibn Abi Kathir. So Hisham ibn Urwa, same age, and he narrates from Hisham ibn Abdullah Dustuwai. So you have Muslim an al-Bukhari an Muslim. So this Muslim is not this Muslim. So don't confuse between the names. This type of we have Ibn Jurayj, he narrates from Hisham, and Hisham narrates from Ibn Jurayj. So you have Hisham and Ibn Jurayj and Hisham. Hisham ibn Yusuf al-San'ani narrates from Ibn Jurayj, who narrates from Hisham ibn Urwa ibn Zubayr. We have Al-Hakam ibn Utayba narrates from Abi Layla, and Ibn Abi Layla narrates from yes, we have Al-Hakam ibn Utayba narrates from Ibn Abi Layla, and Ibn Abi Layla narrates from Al-Hakam. Who is the first Ibn Abi Layla? He's Muhammad ibn Abdul Rahman ibn Abi Layla, narrates from Al-Hakam ibn Utayba, who narrates from Abdul Rahman ibn Abi Layla, narrator. We have to know, sometimes the narrators mention only Abdullah, Muhammad, and this is a lot in Bukhari. So who is this Abdullah and who is this Muhammad? So this, what helps you to know is at-tabaqats. the generations. You know who narrated from so and so and who narrated from so and so. So some gathered that, like Ibn Sa'd in his Tabaqat, and Ibn Abi Khaythama in his book, and Bukhari in his history, and Ibn Abi Hatim in his Jarh wa Ta'dil. And some who wrote books only about the thiqats, the trustworthy guys, like Al-Ijli, Ibn Hibban, Ibn Shaheen. The ones that are criticized, Al-Majruhin, like Ibn Adi, Ibn Hibban. Narrators of a special book like رجال البخاري لأبي نصر الكلباذي, رجال مسلم لأبي بكر بن منجويه, Muslim like Abu al-Fadl ibn Tahir al-Maqdisi rahimahullah, Abu Ali al-Jayyani al-Andalusi, or Nasa'i, or the scholar, the narrators of the 6 books, which are the Sahihain and Abu Dawood, Nasa'i, Tirmidhi, Ibn Majah. That was Al-Ikmal li Al-Hafiz Abdul Ghani Al-Maqdisi, which Imam Al-Hafiz Mizzi made تهذيب, not Ikmal, Al-Kamal, Al-Kamal fi Ma'rifat Al-Rijal. Then Al-Mizzi came and wrote تهذيب Al-Kamal. Then Al-Hafiz Ibn Hajar wrote تهذيب Al-Tahdhib. And before him Al-Hafiz Dhahabi wrote تذهيب التهذيب, تهذيب Al-Kamal. And then Al-Hafiz Ibn Hajar wrote تهذيب وتهذيب الكمال. Then he made, and he added lots of things. He briefed, he summarized and briefed like he does always. And then he squeezed it in a small book called تقريب التهذيب. Al-Hafiz Ibn Hajar is a huge imam actually. Allah rahimallahu, these guys, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made them so that they would compile the sunnah and give it to us so easy to use. Subhanallah. Rahmatullahi alayhim jami'an. I praise these guys and ask Allah to put mercy upon their souls, and don't let anybody say anything bad about these scholars. Okay, Ma'rifatul Asma' al-Mufrada. You have to know the names that are mentioned by themselves. Like what? Al-Hafiz Abu Bakr Ahmad ibn Harun al-Bardiji wrote a book about that, and it's called Al-Asma' al-Mufrada. This scholar passed. He mentioned lots of things, but some of it others wrote and discussed with him about that. From that, he says Sughda ibn Sinan, which is a weak guy. He says by saying Sughda, Dam as-Sad, and sometimes it's mentioned Sughda and Ghain, and after that Dal, and Sughdi. ده ثم ياء كياء النسب وهو اسم علم بلفظ النسب وليس هو فردا. So it's a name that looks like a similar name, nickname, like Sughdi ibn Sinan. Ta'dil ibn Abi Hatim, he says Sughdi al-Kufi ibn Ma'in is a trustworthy guy, and he differentiated between him and between the first guy that I mentioned. And in the history of Al-Uqayli, he says Sughdi ibn Abdullah, narrates from Qatada. Al-Uqayli says narrations are not memorized. And Hafiz Ibn Hajar says, I think he's the same one that Ibn Abi Hatim mentioned. And Al-Uqayli put him in his book of weak guys only because the hadith that he narrated here, and the mistake is not from him. The mistake is from another narrator called Ambasat ibn Abdul Rahman. Wallahu a'lam. From that, we have Sandar, like Ja'far. He's a servant of Zimba al-Judami. He's known by Abu Abdullah, and he has only one name. Sandar. We don't know what's his father's name, what is his family's name. And no one has this name except this guy. So Abu Musa al-Madini mentioned him as الذيل على معرفة الصحابة ibn Manda. He says Sandar Abu al-Aswad. And then others said no. He is the same guy that Ibn Manda mentioned. And he mentioned the hadith that Muhammad ibn Rabi' al-Jizi to Egypt. So he has Sandar Mawla Zimba. And showed, and I mentioned that, and I gave the right idea about that in my book, Al-Isaba fi Ma'rifat Sahaba. It's the best book about Sahaba. The nicknames. Knowing the kuna, Abu Fulan al-Fulani. Knowing the nicknames, which is Al-Haddad, Al-Tabbakh, Al-Tabba', etc. These are nicknames. Sometimes it's like a name like Al-A'mash, Al-A'war, or it's referred to his work, Al-Sabbagh, Al-Haddad, etc. Knowing the tribes or the cities that he's referred to, like the ancient people used to be referred to their tribes, but later on, but the non-Arabs were referred to their cities, or their countries or their states. Okay? Or their jobs, smith, like carpenter, like etc. Al-Najjar, Al-Sabbagh, Al-Haddad. Sometimes you have the same nickname, it's the same, which is referred to somebody, like Khalid ibn Makhlad al-Qatwani or he didn't like people to call him al-Qatwani. ومن المهم أيضا معرفة أسباب ذلك. Why are these names referred? Why do they refer them to these names? It's very important so that you can know why is he referred to this name or to this nickname. Is it his tribe? Is it his work? Is it his job? Is it just a nickname just stuck to him like that? It's important to know all those things. معرفة الموالي. المولى. Was he an ally because he was a slave, a freed slave? Or was he an ally because he converted Islam on his hand? Or was he an ally to anything else? That's important to know. That's very important to know. Knowing the sisters and brothers, very important to know that. Okay, the last thing to know is not the last thing. From the things that are important to know is adab al-shaykh wa talib, and how to deal with your shaykh, and the shaykh has to deal with his students. Very important. Both of them have to have good intention and and be pure from all things that have to do with the world, and have good morals and meanings. And the shaykh has to has to know how to give the lecture, and not to give a lecture in a country or in a city that there are people who are better than him to give that lecture, and not to stop giving sama' because he doesn't have a good intention, and to purify himself, to sit down in a proper way, to not narrate when he's standing up, not being quick, not in a street. When he is an old man and starts to forget, he stops narrating, and later that helps him when he's narrating. Student has to respect his shaykh, and not to be bad in taking knowledge from him, always sitting down and asking him when he's tired, when he's not prepared to give the lecture. He has to lead him to others that can benefit from him, and not to stop or seize taking knowledge from him because he's shy and he's arrogant, and to write what he listens from him in a proper way, and take care of what he takes from him, and always memorize what he has in his mind. When should the scholar give lectures? In which age? Well, there's nothing in that. When he can narrate when he understands, and he can understand what he's narrating. And that's why scholars always get their students to the lectures, so they write for them that they participate, although they can't understand even, but they write that so it's for barakah. This is very important, and that needs an ijazah so they can narrate, and for the student, he reaches an age that he can understand and know what he's doing. There isn't a specific age for that. For a kafir, he can understand things and take it when he converts Islam. He can narrate it. That's no problem about that. Even the rebellion guy, when he becomes just, he can narrate whatever he wants after he repents. In giving the lecture, there's no time for that. When he finds that it's a proper time, and he can give the lecture for that. Ibn Khallad al-Ramahur, if he is 40 years, he can give that. Many scholars narrate it before that. There's no age for that according to Al-Hajar. You have to know how to write the hadith, how to spell it, how to do all these things. There are all these things. You can find them in a book called Al-Ilma' fi Taqid al-Riwayat wa-Sama' for Al-Qadi Iyad. You can study it whenever you want again. It's a very important book that teaches all these kinds of things. How to give the lecture, how to sit down with the sheikh, all these things are very important. Okay. And when you listen to a scholar, but you think that there are parts that you didn't listen to them properly, you didn't hear them, you can just make a full ijazah and everything, so it solves the problem. And ijazah solves the problem of listening. But this was those days when you had to listen. But nowadays, alhamdulillah, the books are wherever you can find them. So the ijazah is for barakah. I insist on this. Al-ijazah nowadays is for barakah. And what is important nowadays is to understand what you're narrating. It's not just narrating, and then you said, I read a book on so-and-so. You read a book. Did you understand anything? Did you memorize it? No. You didn't even take anything from the book. So it's kind of barakah, that's it. But a real study is to sit down and listen very proper and take a pen and know how to pronounce words, know how to pronounce the hadith. That is the main and important thing. To know how to travel to seek knowledge. And there are books that were Al-Khatib Baghdadi wrote a book called Al-Rihla fi Talab al-Hadith, and we studied this book in Cordoba Academy. We can study it whenever you want again. It's a very interesting book, traveling in seeking hadith. You have to know the books, how scholars used to write the books. So some of them wrote them according to asanid, al-masanid, like Musnad Imam Ahmad. He says Musnad Abu Bakr, Musnad Umar, Musnad so-and-so, and he goes on and gathers all the narrations that he has according to that sahabi. Or according to the chapters, al-tahara, al-salah, al-hajj, like the books of Sunan, or al-ilal, mistakes of the problems and the roots of the hadith, like Ilal, Ad-Daraqutni, and others. Or al-Atraf, he narrates parts of the hadith so that you can understand the other parts. And then he gathers all the asanid that have to do with those narrations. Why was the hadith narrated? And we have Abu Hafs al-Ukbari, one of the shuyukh of Al-Qadi Abu Ya'la al-Hanbali, wrote a book about that. And Ibn Daqiq al-Eid rahimahullah said that some of the scholars was writing a book about that. and most of scholars wrote all kinds of things that have to do in the ilm al-hadith. وصنفوا في غالب هذه الأنواع على ما أشرنا إليه غالبا، وهي أي هذه الأنواع المذكورة في هذه الخاتمة نقل محض. All of them just write what they have to, what you have to have. مستغني عن التمثيل وحصر ومتعسف فلتراجع بمسوطاتها. I just wrote this and I didn't give a lot of examples. You can go back to the origin books and search for that. والله الموفق والهادي الحق لا إله إلا هو عليه توكلت وإليه أنيب وحسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل والحمد لله رب العالمين صلى الله وسلم على خير خلقه نبي الرحمة محمد وآله وصحبه وأزواجه وعترته إلى يوم الدين والحمد لله رب العالمين وجزاكم الله خيرا. Now for the book that we read, this منظومة المئية في ذكر حال أشرف البرية for الإمام ابن أبي العز الحنفي رحمه الله. العباد small, it has 100 it's a manzuma that has 100 verses, and it talks about the whole life of the Prophet ﷺ, but very brief. I always prefer brief books because you can't stand a long time. And I can't give an estimation of a long time when should we finish the book unless you or some of you are insisting on a big book. That's another story. And you have to be patient because I had some students that came and told me we want to study, and then they asked me to give them a big book. I told them no, you won't benefit from that. And so all of a sudden they stop. They say, I can't continue. Okay, that's what I told you. You have to take from your Shaykh and trust him. The Shaykh makes things easy for you because he knows every book and he knows how to study and how to benefit from a book. When the lecture becomes long, you have your own life, you have your problems, you get bored, you say, okay, I'll forget about this lecture, I'll participate this time, the second time I won't participate, so you won't benefit. But subhanAllah, there are some students that can stand firm until they finish the book. Alhamdulillah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Thank you very much. I ask you to pray Allah for me and remember me in your dua. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Thank you very much. And
oh, yeah, thank you. A couple of quick questions, if it's alright.
Yeah, if you can ask me. My laptop is gonna cut after a little bit, but the Facebook is working. So just carry on.
No problem. So just with regards to Nuzhat, do we have some sort of exam or something now?
That's up to you. If you want an exam, I can send you an exam.
Okay, inshallah.
Okay, I'll send you an exam, inshallah. Okay.
Okay, and Sheikh, so with regards to the manzuma Ibn Abi is on the Sirah, after you return?
Yeah, after I return. I'm going to return, inshallah, after 20 20 February, inshallah. I'll come back 20 February, inshallah. So when I come back, inshallah, we will connect with each other. And actually, some of you still have a lecture with me on Masail al-Jahiliyyah. So that, inshallah, will continue after I come back. And then we will do this, inshallah, lecture at the same time, inshallah, bihawlillahi ta'ala.
Sheikh, when are you going to leave Malaysia?
I'm going to leave Monday, inshallah, yeah.
When do you think you will have that exam prepared for us?
Sorry?
Nuzhat Al-Nadhar prepared for us?
When should I send you the exam?
As in, when do you want to give us the exam? Do you want to do it after you return or?
No, I can send it to you whenever I can. It's not a big deal because whenever I can send it. I can send it tomorrow. I can send it. I'll just find some time and send it to you, inshallah.
Okay.
I'll send it to you on that group
Um,
that we did on the WhatsApp.
do you want is that
Yeah, it's not. No, I would prefer to give it to you before, so that we can finish all what we have to do, and you can prepare an ijaza similar to the ijaza of usul al-thalatha of who passed with me usul al-thalatha. You can make one similar to it.
as in how you're gonna give us an exam? How are we supposed to
Sent you the answers, and you sent me the. I'm gonna send you the questions, and you sent me the answers, inshallah. Okay. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.